Shubha and Nidhi. Thank you so much for taking out the time for us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Great, guys. So, guys, you are ex-bankers who left your promising job to start your own venture, Your Space, an ecosystem that serves as a safe residence for young students. So, I have to start this conversation with some of my own experience and observations. As somebody who has lived in a PG, rented apartments, and now actually is renting one of my own apartments, I've always dealt with men when it comes to dealing in this space. Housing sector predominantly is dominated by our male counterparts. How did you and Nidhi manage to find a niche?
So, I can start and Nidhi can jump in. This is a question that we get asked very often.
I'm sure.
But to be very honest, I think Nidhi and I never paid so much attention to the fact that we were women in a male-dominated sector. And I think both of us as entrepreneurs and founders, want to stick to the fact that it's not that we are female founders, but we are founders and we are entrepreneurs, and every entrepreneur sort of faces the same challenges. But yes, obviously, initially when we were, our first hostel was in Greater Noida. We were on the road interviewing students, meeting landlords, meeting builders. I think the first reaction was they were very shocked or surprised that they were two women. But it also, I think, depends on how you react back to that, right? I mean, we took it in our stride. We kind of, we focused the conversation on work, on what the value proposition was, on why to work with Your Space. And we didn't fuel the fire. But yes, initially we did face a lot of pushback, uncertainty in terms of, can two women actually rent an entire 80-bed building, and will you be able to? But I think, I mean, we were brand new. Nobody had heard of student housing before, so we were expecting some skepticism. But I think we've tried to sort of steer away from the fact that it's male dominated, but more on the fact that this is the product and this is what we are here to deliver.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, I think our jobs as well had trained us pretty well. So in banking, for example, I was on the trading floor. It was male dominated, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, you very quickly realize it's about how good you are at your job, right? So you also learn to become a little thick-skinned. You all learn to rise above all of that and not let it affect you.
Yeah.
So I feel like that also trained us very well. 10 years of that experience for both of us, we've had times, the first time, some parent met us and said, we want to meet your boss because in the bosses. But I think just, we took it in our stride, we made a joke about it and moved on, right? And I feel today, when people look at that space, there is a level of respect that Shubha and I both command, when people talk about student housing, at least, they talk about, what we've built in a positive light.
Yeah, and something that is absolutely needed, and it's a unique model. It's something that in a growing economy, I think it is something that is absolutely essential. And I'm glad that you guys have taken that up.
Thanks.
So actually, I remember one of the you said you've lived in a PG, right? And you're from LSR. So am I. So I think you remember what PGs around LSR were like, right? Old uncle aunties have given out the lower floor, or behind at Amar Colony where there's one room like a matchbox after matchbox. I think we realized when we started looking at the sector, we realized from when we had graduated to when we started Your Space, nothing had really changed. And students are kind of facing still the same thing. Whereas if you looked, and which was surprising because students are, the amount parents are paying for such accommodation continues to increase, but you are not getting quality accommodation at all. And not just PGs, but even on-campus hostels actually have not really kept up with more modern facilities. It's still the same buildings, and also a lot of colleges don't build enough hostels for their entire outstation sort of requirements. So I think the market was in dire need of sort of someone looking to professionalize the student housing space. And even then, after we've been around for 6 years, even all the organized student housing players are less than 1% of the market now. So I think there's a huge scope for us to grow in this sector here.
That's amazing. I actually want to draw out from what Nidhi said that, your experience in banking did, prepare you guys to take on the challenge of the real world or the entrepreneurship, or the fact that you were two new young entrepreneurs entering a space, new to your backgrounds. But there has to be have been a bit of a challenge in explaining the same to your friends and family. You know, both of you were bankers, doing exceptionally well, leaving all of that behind and entering into a place which is completely new. And like you said, there are hardly 1% people. The industry is regularized. How did that go about?
So I think that was a challenge to kind of get our parents to agree. But I think we've been very lucky that they've been very supportive. I still remember, Shubha's dad was in town when we tried to convince him, right, that we're moving back and we're setting up student housing, and he genuinely thought this was, probably we're just being, we've had a bad day at work and this is just something new we've come up with. And we were convinced we had convinced him,
Yeah.
and he was convinced he had convinced us out of it, right? So that battle went on for a couple of weeks till we sort of sat my parents down and said, listen, this is real, we're actually coming back. But I think they knew that, or they hoped that we knew what we were doing.
Right.
Initially, I think both the fathers were very, very, cautious about, just being out. We started off in Greater Noida, safety, security, etc. But I think they've seen us hustle, and I think I can very, I can say it very confidently that they're very, very proud of us now, and no regrets.
That's awesome.
And I think they also realized that we were very convinced of the idea, and we were
Yeah.
going to do this either way. And I think what also helped convince them was the fact that if we were willing to leave our jobs and start from scratch, we put in our entire savings into this first hostel ourselves, because we were clear that let's start with one, see
Yeah.
whether we know what we're even talking about, right? And I think the way we approached it, we started small and grew one hostel at a time. I think that gave them confidence. Also, I think Nidhi and I were very lucky that when we got in initially, we managed to connect with some great set of advisors. I think we still follow that instinct of, we know what we are good at, but we're also very clear of where we need external help, and we're not shy of asking for it. So when we moved in, neither of us had worked in real estate. We found people through our friends and family connection to find someone who was in real estate who could help guide us. So I think we've been very open to asking for help where we needed it, and that's held us sort of in good stead as we sort of built the business. But yes, the conversation with my father was hilarious, because he thought he had convinced us out of it, and we were booking tickets the next day to come back. They were obviously happy to have us back in India, but they couldn't understand why we were driving to Greater Noida 3 times a day. But I think overall, yes, they are definitely very proud of what we've built now.
That's amazing. Yeah, I can imagine parents taking their own time to support, but once they do, they are totally with your back.
Yeah.
Another very important point, Shubha, that you highlighted that was you guys were never shy of asking for help, identify the place where you needed help and where you did not have an expertise, and really reach out to people. And that's one point that I've, over the experience along with Soror, that I've realized that a lot of entrepreneurs tend to miss out. Even for myself, when I started off on my journey, I don't know how many people told me that Tulika, entrepreneur is a very lonely journey. You're going to be all there, all by yourself, very few people standing by your side. What are some of your thoughts around that, and how did you guys, manage that challenge?
So I think.
Sorry, go ahead, Nips.
Go ahead.
No, I think we kind of took it on head on, right? We've used our sort of 12 years of corporate experience that we had before we started with this to kind of draw out a business plan, right? To sort of think through it in terms of what are the big basic building blocks of starting this business. And we kind of understood where we possibly needed help and where we had some of our own experience. I think one of the reasons what drew us to student housing is we have been students. We have seen what is possible in the West. We've seen what our parents went through when we went to hostel. So we felt like we understood the customer side of the journey, but we needed help on the real estate side and what is it that the landlords are looking for, what kind of, how do architects work, how do you want the interior design to look like. So we broke it down to basic building blocks, and then what we knew, we kind of went with first principles and our gut when we were building the hostel in terms of what students would like. But we added as much data as we can. Nidhi and I must have interviewed over 200, 300 students in Noida in person before we started our first hostel on, what is it that students are looking for these days, what is available in the market. I think when we moved back, I moved back, we just spent time driving through, looking at PGs, looking at good PGs, looking at bad PGs, because there are some good players as well, local guys who've been around for a long time. So I think we spent a lot of time in the market understanding what was there, and we took our time to build that product. Our hostel only started in July 2016, and we were back by Jan 2016. So we took that time to sort of figure out what that product was. And we were shameless in asking for help, and we still are. We kind of ask our immediate family, we ask contacts, we've networked, we've learned how to network. We know what we are looking for, and very open to ideas and suggestions. And that's how we've built the team even now.
No, absolutely. And I think just acknowledging that you don't know something, I think that's the first step, right? Neither of us was from real estate, neither of us knew hospitality, right? This is an hospitality on steroids business, right? You're talking to parents, you need to keep them happy, the students happy, the college is happy.
True.
Shubha and I didn't know how much housekeeping material would be needed for this, but we literally went back to first principles and stood there to understand and learn what it means. We spent time with hospitality people, we got friends and family and network to connect us to people within hospitality, how to make a menu, how do you time out housekeeping, how much time should a housekeeping spend on a room. We've actually gone back to first principles, right? Because how do you grow a business till you don't know what the basic operational SOP will look like? And if you don't control it and if you don't own it, then you can obviously have lots of people execute it for you, but you also need to know what you need executed and what your vision is. So I think even after we started in July, 6 months, out of which the first 2 months, so I think Shubha and I also lived at the hostel. We would keep moving from room to room as the room is occupied, because we wanted to understand what the day-to-day challenges are, where is it breaking down, because that helped us with figuring out what a practical SOP also looks like, right? You may want a lot of things on paper, but when you actually start implementing them on ground, you realize that doesn't work for some very obvious reasons, which, you may not see. So we spent 2 months almost living in the property, figuring out everything, getting feedback on food, menu design. And I think that's helped us in a lot of ways, because today when we sit down, we've done it ourselves.
Right.
Correct. And now we brought some brilliant people in the team who are running it. But at least, we know when we're having an educated conversation with them, because, we've done this ourselves.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think living in that hostel actually taught us what it means in terms of core operations, right? So even today, we can understand what is going on in a building, and our team realizes that we've done this ourselves. So we kind of know what is it that the student's pain point is, how difficult it is for the warden to manage college students, what happens with food in a hostel. So I think we've kind of lived through it. And I remember Nidhi and I was packing up every night because we weren't sure that room will get sold in the morning. So you would pack up again and then take another room. But that really helped us. And the fact that we focused on one hostel, I mean, some things went well, some things we changed in our sort of blueprint going forward. And we still do that. We're still talking to customers, hearing what they want and trying to change our sort of service set based on what they require.
So you're constantly innovating, you're constantly improving your services based on the feedback that's coming.
Correct. We realized that, hearing from the students itself is probably the smartest way to improve the product, right? So we're regularly running surveys, trying to get feedback, because that's the only way we'll actually improve the product.
True.
Right? So we're very cognizant of that.
I think that's an amazing tip, to be absolutely close to your customers, to listen to them and constantly take their feedback and bake it into your product. I think we all can benefit a lot from that, from your tip.
And I think it's also a feedback that may be different from what you want, right?
Yeah.
When we went in, we had a certain idea what the hostel, what sort of services should be in a hostel, but what we heard back from the customer was different to what we had thought. To be willing to change your own mindset, to say, okay, no, if this is what the customer wants, then it's kind of that, let's change it around, because all of us go in with sort of certain fixed mindsets. And I think one thing that you have to learn to be flexible and sort of learn and relearn. I mean, it's been more than 15 years since we passed out of college. So obviously the client and customer has changed since when we were in college. So I think, and especially with this generation, you have to kind of keep up with what is it that they want? What's the coolest new thing?
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. I think the generation gap has reduced substantially, and the requirements are changing on a daily basis. Right. So, Shubha, again, I know you mentioned that you guys never looked at it as something which is a male-dominated industry and then, address the situation. But I have to still ask you one thing, that a piece of advice you would give to any aspiring entrepreneur who is on the edge of starting her business or is tossing with the idea only because it is currently a male-dominating industry.
See, what I would say to that is be absolutely convinced about your product and vision. I think what if you're, and this is for anybody, but particularly for female entrepreneurs, if you're not convinced about what you're trying to build, and you have to have a full sort of business view of it. It's not just about the products. You need to know the finances. You need to know the accounts. Nidhi and I have become part CA and lawyers, and something we had never looked at earlier, right? So I think you need to have that full 360-degree view of the business, and be able to convince anyone about it and learn to hustle. I think,
yeah.
I hate saying this, sometimes maybe men hustle better than us, but women kind of tend to follow whatever certain guidelines that may be set, or this is the way to approach, and if they are not replying, then sort of can start backing off. But I think you have to learn to hustle. And if you're convinced about the idea and then there's merit in it and you've thought through it, then it comes down to the principles of the business, and doesn't matter whether it's a woman or a guy sitting across the table.
No, I think I absolutely agree. It's just the hustle, the perseverance. Like Shubha and I knew that since we moved back, failure was not an option for us. I think also getting a good mentor. We were very lucky to have had a mentor who guided us, right? Sometimes we have ideas, but we just don't know how to, execute or how to start formalizing them. We were very lucky to, have met a mentor who, made us take a step back, view the business in a more holistic fashion, think of the evolution of the business over 9-10 years. How does the business continue to be profitable? So I think that helped us think through and clarified our thoughts, right? And I think that comes back again to Shubha's point. You should be able to articulate your vision, be shameless, and reach out to people. You know what? People want to mentor other people. You'll be surprised how many people, want to help you. It's about you reaching out. So I think if once you have an idea and a fair amount of conviction, the idea is to find that mentor who will help you think through and formalize it.
Right. So as long as you know your product and as long as you're ready to give you all that it needs, it really doesn't matter who you're going against.
Correct.
Great.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. Towards the end, I really want to know what's next coming our way at your space.
So I think the idea was, we started off with, just Delhi, NCR, Bombay. We've grown organically. Obviously, COVID was a bit of a bummer last 2 years. But that it was for everyone. I think now the plan is, we've spent the last 2 years building out the core building blocks that we needed to get the right product out. We spent time, like Shubha said, evolving the product, speaking to students continuously, and then have made sure that kind of feeds into the service quality, the product, and the community as a whole. So where we are at now, we will be launching in about 11 or 12 cities this summer. Getting deeper in the markets, we were already there. We will be anywhere between 16 and 20,000 beds between June and July. So your space is reaching more cities, wants to touch the lives of more students, and build a large network of student community. I think so you'll see a lot more of your space on ground now.
Amazing. So looking forward to experiencing more of your space. And I'm really, really glad we got connected. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
It was a pleasure connecting.
Likewise. Thank you so much for sharing all your experiences, and thank you for all the advice that you gave to entrepreneurs like myself and a lot many.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sulika. Thanks for your time.